In the great chamber of the Galactic Council, a single seat has remained empty for 300 years. It is a memorial, a mystery, a silent testament to a species that has never appeared. The younger races of the galaxy, emboldened by an age of unbroken peace, demand it be removed. They call it a waste of space. But the oldest beings in the galaxy know the truth. They are the silent curators, and they have watched this species from afar. They have seen their wars, their ambition, their terrifying, unbreakable will. What if the empty seat is not an invitation, but a warning? What happens when the species you have prayed would never find you knocks on your front door? And how do you greet a visitor whose very nature is a threat to 1,000,000 years of peace? The Council kept Earth's seat empty until they learned why and shuddered. Before we begin, take a moment to subscribe and like the video. It helps us journey to the darkest corners of the galaxy. All right, let's begin the story. Deep beneath the polished, sterile surfaces of Concordia Prime, in secret chambers that did not appear on any official star charts, Curator Forlag walked through corridors lit by the faint, ancient glow of captured starlight. The walls here were older than most civilizations, carved from the bedrock of a planet that had witnessed the birth and death of countless species. This was the sanctum of the Silent Curators, a council within the council, a secret society of the oldest and wisest beings in the galaxy. He was not alone. Moving beside him in the heavy silence was Keeper Lyra, her crystalline body refracting the soft light into complex, shifting patterns that hurt the organic eye to look at directly. Behind them floated the Shaper of Thoughts, a being of pure, non-corporeal psychic energy, its consciousness held together by a shimmering field of technology so advanced it was indistinguishable from magic. Bringing up the rear came others, a Grok elder whose stony form remembered the cooling of suns, a luminous matriarch who had seen empires rise and fall like the tide. They were the ones who remembered, the ones who carried the burden of the galaxy's most dangerous truths. They reached a chamber at the heart of the sanctum, a room that existed in a subtle state of flux, partially outside of normal space-time. Here, they could speak freely, without fear of their words being overheard by the younger, more naive species who still believed the galaxy was a safe and predictable place. Forlag, a massive, reptilian-like being, his hide a testament to 1,000 forgotten battles, placed a scarred, three-fingered hand on a device at the center of the room. A column of light filled the air, and three-dimensional images began to form. They showed a small, vibrant blue world, spinning in the lonely darkness of an unexceptional star system. Third planet from a yellow G-type star. Mostly water. A single, large moon. A world-designated Sol, 3. Earth. The debate grows stronger with each cycle, said Keeper Lyra, her voice like the chiming of 1,000 tiny, crystal bells in a storm. The younger species in the council above do not understand our caution. They see the empty seat as an insult to their own status. It is because they have never seen what we have seen, projected the Shaper of Thoughts, its words appearing as shimmering script in the air. They think power is measured in the size of a fleet or the yield of a weapon. They do not understand that the most dangerous force in the universe is a mind that refuses to accept the concept of impossibility. Forlag touched the device again, and the images changed. They were now viewing scenes from Earth's long, brutal history, recorded by cloaked observation posts that had watched the human world for thousands of years. The first image showed humans in their primitive dawn, fighting with sharpened stones and heavy clubs. But even then, Forlag knew something was fundamentally different about them. Other species fought for territory, for food, for mating rights. The humans were fighting for a symbol, a crude painting on a cave wall. They were dying for an idea. Look at this, Forlag said, his voice a low, gravelly rumble. He pointed to one scene, a primitive human settlement, a collection of mud and stick huts, under attack by a much larger, better-armed tribe. Any other species, faced with these odds, would surrender to save the lives of their young. It is the logical, ionarily sound response. He gestured, and the image moved forward in time. Watch what the humans do instead. The image showed the defenders, men, women, and even children, setting fire to their own city. They worked together with a terrifying, unified purpose, destroying their homes, their food stores, everything they had built. denying their enemies the spoils of victory. They chose to have nothing, rather than let their conquerors have anything. They would rather have a victory of ashes than accept a defeat with survival, whispered Keeper Lyra, her crystalline form flickering with distress. This is not logical behavior. Logic has nothing to do with it. Keeper, Forelag rumbled. This is spite. Pure, weaponized, beautiful spite. A force of nature that we have seen in no other species. The images continued, a cascade of human madness and ambition. Humans building flimsy wooden ships to cross vast, storm-tossed oceans, not because they had to, but because someone told them it was impossible. Humans climbing the highest, most inhospitable mountains on their world, suffering frostbite and death for no other reason than, in their own words, because it is there. Humans diving to the deepest, most crushing parts of their oceans, into a realm of absolute darkness and pressure, just to see what was down there. Other species explore to find resources or to expand their territory. The shaper of thoughts projected. The Vexians only chart a new system when a profit motive has been established. The Signans only travel to worlds that meet a 99.8% habitability index. The humans will strap themselves to a controlled explosion to go to a dead, airless rock for the experience. Their curiosity, it is a form of madness. It is unstoppable. More images flowed past, a testament to this unique, terrifying insanity. Humans discovering fire and immediately finding ways to make bigger, more destructive fires. Humans inventing the wheel and, within a few generations, building vehicles that moved faster than any living thing on their planet. Humans splitting the atom and, with their very next thought, building weapons that could incinerate their entire world, holding themselves hostage for decades in a state of self-imposed terror they called peace. Every advancement they make, they immediately weaponize, said another curator, his form shifting like smoke in the wind. Not out of inherent evil, but out of a deep, primal, and perhaps wise assumption. They believe that if a thing can be used as a weapon, it will be used as a weapon, so they might as well be the first to master it. Forelag changed the images again. Now they showed more recent human history, the events that had led the curators to transition from mere observation to active, fearful concealment. A human city, London, under relentless bombardment from the sky by other humans. The logical response would be to surrender or evacuate. Instead, the humans dug tunnels. They lived, worked, and fought from underground, in the dark, for months on end. When their enemies flooded the tunnels, they built makeshift boats and fought from the water-clogged ruins. When the boats were destroyed, they swam through the rubble and fought with knives and bare hands. 18 months, Forelag said quietly. The siege lasted 18 months. The attacking force had superior numbers, better weapons, and complete control of the air. By every metric in the curator archives, by every law of strategic logic, the city should have fallen in 18 days. What finally ended it? Asked a younger curator, a being who had been inducted only a few centuries ago and had not seen these particular records. The humans won, said Keeper Lyra, her crystal form flickering with a distress that was almost pain. They actually won. They turned their desperation into a weapon. They invented new tactics, new technologies, born of sheer, bloody-minded refusal to lose. They found a way to defeat an enemy that should have been impossible to beat. The images shifted to space. Humanity's first crude, terrifying attempts to leave their world. Other species had developed spaceflight slowly, carefully, with decades of methodical planning and preparation. The humans strapped themselves to barely controlled continuous explosions and hoped for the best. Look at their early space program, projected the shaper, highlighting a particular, horrifying scene of a rocket exploding on its launchpad. A 30% catastrophic failure rate in the first decade. Any sane, logical species would have stopped, re-evaluated, and spent another century on theoretical design. The humans called it acceptable losses and kept going. They lost more astronauts in their first 20 years of space exploration than most species have lost in 1,000 years of interstellar travel. More scenes flowed past, each one a testament to humanity's unique brand of glorious, terrifying madness. Humans landing on their moon, not because they needed to, but because another group of humans had challenged them to a race. Humans building primitive space stations by hand, floating in the void with no safety nets except their own stubborn refusal to die. And now, Forlag rumbled, they are reaching for the stars. Our outermost monitoring posts report human ships, crude, ugly vessels held together with metal welds and sheer determination, probing the edges of their system. They will achieve practical faster-than-light travel within the next 50 of their years. He changed the images one final time. These showed projections. Sophisticated computer models, run on the curator's own quantum computers, of what might happen if humanity ever left their system and encountered other galactic species. The results were terrifying. Every simulation, regardless of the parameters, ended the same way. Not with human conquest, not with galactic destruction, but with humans becoming the dominant, central force in the galaxy, simply because they refused to accept that anything was impossible. They didn't conquer. They just solved problems, innovated, and outcompeted everyone else with a relentless, cheerful energy that was more effective than any fleet of warships. They do not even realize what they are, Keeper Lyra chimed sadly. They think they are weak, fragile. They think they are primitive. They compare themselves only to each other and see only their flaws, their divisions, their capacity for self-destruction. And that, projected the Shaper, is what makes them so profoundly dangerous. A species that knows its own power might be cautious. A species that believes it is weak and insignificant will take risks that would terrify gods. Forlag turned off the device. The chamber returned to its dim, solemn lighting. The silent curators stood in the heavy quiet for a long moment, each lost in their own ancient thoughts about the implications of what they had seen. "How long do we have?" asked one of them finally. "Our best estimates suggest they will achieve a stable warp drive within 50 Earth years," Forlag said. "Once they can leave their system freely, it is only a matter of time before they find us." "And when they do?" Forlag looked around the chamber, at beings who had lived for millennia, who had seen the rise and fall of entire civilizations, who had thought they understood all the ways the galaxy could surprise them. "When they do," he said slowly, "we will discover what happens when an unstoppable force of chaotic, creative, spiteful determination meets a galaxy that has forgotten what it truly means to struggle." The meeting ended, as it always did, with a silent, desperate prayer to whatever powers might still be listening. A prayer that the humans would remain content with their small, blue world for just a little longer. But deep in their ancient hearts, the curators knew that prayer would not be answered. Humans were curious by nature, and curious humans were the most dangerous and most promising force in the known galaxy. The emergency alarms had never sounded in the 300 years since Concordia Prime was built. The deep, resonating, soul-shaking tone that now filled every corridor and chamber was designed to signal only one thing: the arrival of an unknown, uncatalogued, and potentially hostile force in a council-guarded system. Speaker Vexathala rushed through the corridors toward the central control center, her translucent, jellyfish-like form flickering with stress patterns her people had not displayed for centuries. Behind her ran dozens of other council members, their various forms of locomotion, scuttling, rolling, slithering, floating, creating a chaotic parade of pure, unadulterated panic. In the control center, technicians from a dozen different species worked frantically at their stations. The massive holographic viewing screen at the front of the room showed a sector of space that should have been empty. Instead, it displayed the impossible. A ship was approaching Concordia Prime, but this was not like any ship in the Galactic Registry. Where other vessels were smooth, elegant, and organic, designed by species who had mastered the art of moving through space with grace and efficiency, this craft, this thing, looked like it had been assembled from spare parts and held together by sheer, bloody-minded stubbornness. The hull was a patchwork of scarred and battered plates, clearly having survived multiple impacts. Strange protrusions, sensor arrays, weapon pods, scientific instruments, jutted out at odd, asymmetrical angles, as if they had been bolted on as an afterthought. Most disturbing of all, the ship's energy signature was completely, fundamentally wrong. It was running on a contained fusion reaction, primitive by Council standards, but it was being pushed to power levels that should have torn the vessel apart. It was using technologies that seemed to violate several fundamental laws of physics, not by transcending them, but by brutally ignoring them. "What is it?" demanded Vexathala. Her voice, a series of complex harmonic chimes, carrying an undercurrent of fear that other species could sense even if they could not understand her language. The chief technician, a Kthar hive member whose multiple arms danced across his control panels, clicked nervously before responding. "Unknown vessel, speaker. Design does not match any ship in our 10-million-year database. But the material composition," he paused, double-checking his readings, his mandibles vibrating with disbelief. "It appears to be constructed primarily of refined iron, titanium, and carbon composites from the Sol system." A cold, absolute silence fell over the control center. Every being present knew what that meant. "Humans," whispered someone in the back, the word a curse. "How?" asked another technician. "Our outer monitoring posts show no signs of human FTL travel. How did they build a ship capable of reaching us across 500 light-years?" On the viewing screen, the ship continued its approach. Markings were visible on the hull, a simple, angular script that the universal translator struggled with before finally displaying the words, "UNSS Persistence, Earth Exploration Command." "They call it an exploration ship," said the Kthar technician, his voice clicking with disbelief. "But look at these weapon signatures." New readings appeared. The human ship was indeed armed, but not in any way that made sense. Instead of the elegant, precise energy lances and particle beams used by civilized species, the vessel bristled with crude projectile launchers, racks of what appeared to be fission-based explosive charges, and what looked horrifyingly like mining equipment that had been converted for combat use. "Why would an exploration ship need so many weapons?" asked Vexathala. The answer came from Curator Forlag, who had arrived in the control center without anyone noticing. His massive, ancient form seemed to fill the room with an aura of grim, historical dread. "Because to humans," he said quietly, his voice a low rumble, "exploration and warfare are the same thing. They do not go to new places expecting to be welcomed. They go expecting to fight for the right to be there." More alarms began sounding as additional ships appeared on long-range sensors. For a moment, pure panic filled the control center as technicians assumed the humans were arriving in force. But the signatures were familiar, terribly familiar. They were council ships, fleeing. "Speaker," called out a communications officer. "We are receiving emergency departure notifications from 47 council member species. They are evacuating Concordia Prime. Immediately." "Where are they going?" demanded Vexathala. "As far away as possible, Speaker. The Zetherian Empire is withdrawing all their ships to their home system. The floating minds of Cygnus are requesting permission to leave this dimension entirely, sir." Curator Forlag moved to one of the communication stations, his heavy steps shaking the deck. "Send a message to all remaining council members. Curator emergency protocols are now in effect. Any species that wishes to leave should do so immediately. This is not a drill." "What about those who stay?" asked Vexathala, her translucent form trembling. "Those who stay," replied Forlag grimly, "will witness the end of the galaxy as we know it. But perhaps someone should be here to record what happens next." On the screen, the human ship continued its steady, relentless approach. Communications officers tried every standard greeting and identification protocol in the galactic database, a desperate flood of hails on every frequency. For long, agonizing minutes, there was no response. Then, suddenly, the speakers crackled to life. The sound was rough, unmodulated, filled with static. "Unidentified station, this is Captain Eva Rostova of the United Nations Starship Persistence. We've been tracking your massive energy signature for weeks, and, well, we just had to come and say hello. We request permission to dock. We come in peace, and we are, very, very excited to meet you." The voice was cheerful, friendly, and completely, terrifyingly unaware of the wave of existential terror it was causing throughout the station. "They want a dock," whispered a technician, as if the concept was too alien to comprehend. "Of course they do," Forlag rumbled. "Humans do not observe from a distance. They meet problems and opportunities face to face. They kick in the door and shake your hand." Speaker Vexathala looked around the control center at the beings who had chosen to remain, representatives from perhaps a dozen species. all of them either too brave, too curious, or simply too terrified to flee. "What do we tell them?" she asked, her voice a faint chime. "We tell them the truth," said Forlag, a strange, grim light in his ancient eyes. "We tell them they are welcome, because the alternative is to deny them, to make them angry. And believe me, Speaker, no one in this galaxy is prepared for angry humans." Vexathala activated the communication system with trembling appendages. "Captain Rostova, this is Speaker Vexathala of the Galactic Council. You are welcome to dock with our station. Please follow the guidance beacons to docking Bay 7. "Thank you so much," came the enthusiastic, impossibly naive reply. "This is incredible. We hoped we might find other intelligent life out here, but we never imagined anything this amazing. We have so many questions." The transmission ended, leaving the control center in stunned, horrified silence. "They have questions," said one of the technicians in disbelief. "Of course they do," replied Forlag. "And they will not stop asking until they know everything. Everything about us. About this station. About the galaxy. About all the things that, for 10,000 years, we have tried so hard to keep hidden." Through the viewports, they could see the ugly, scarred human ship maneuvering toward the docking bay. It moved like a predator, not with the smooth, calculated grace of other species, but with the quick, adaptive, unpredictable movements of something that had learned to survive in relentlessly hostile environments. The massive docking bay doors began to cycle open. Beyond them lay a corridor that led directly to the council chambers, where a single, beautiful, empty seat waited for its occupants. Curator Forlag looked around the control center one final time at the few who remained. "Remember this moment," he said, his voice a low, final prophecy. "This is the last day the galaxy belonged to us." The doors finished opening, and somewhere in the distance, for the first time in 300 years, footsteps could be heard on Concordia Prime. Human footsteps, walking confidently, curiously, into a galaxy that was holding its breath in terror.